here tonight. Hi, I am Rachel Hutchison. I am the manager of online instructional design here at NHSA. I'm also a teaching artist. One of my favorite things to do is to work with the Smithsonian. And tonight we are going to learn with the Smithsonian about inspiring curiosity and wonder. If you would like to listen to this session in Spanish, you can click on the Spanish language button at the bottom of your screen.
Buenas noches a todos y bienvenidos. Esta presentación va a ser interpretada simultáneamente en español. Si la quiere escuchar, por favor, denle un clic al globo terráqueo en la parte baja de su pantalla y ahí puede seleccionar español. Gracias.
Okay, so tonight we are here to talk about curiosity and wonder. This is going to be an interactive session. We're going to have opportunities to practice with some hands-on components. So I hope everybody brought their sense of fun tonight because that is the plan. This is a very engaging session. A couple of things that we're hoping to do is to explore why curiosity and wonder are at the core of learning in early childhood. We're going to learn a little bit about how you can make your classroom environment a playground for curious minds. We're going to discover a world of amazing resources from the Smithsonian that can inspire young learners. And we're also going to gain some tools and some skills to help you meet those key ELOF approaches to learning goals, which is always important for us in Head Start. So buckle up, this is going to be great. Our presenters tonight are Anne Kaspari. She is an early childhood education specialist at the National Air and Space Museum. Anne is a favorite of mine and has 30 years of experience connecting young children to museum objects and content. She works to develop the air and space learning experiences for young children and for their caregivers in two locations, both in DC and Virginia, as well as just like this in a virtual environment. And she is joined by another of my favorites, Julia Smith, a museum and early learning specialist at the Smithsonian Early Enrichment Center's Office of Engagement, fondly known as SEEK. In this position, she offers curricular support to classroom educators working with children birth through kindergarten. So that should sound familiar, Head Start. These two experts are here to spread a little joy and a little curiosity and a little wonder. I'll hand it to you.
Thanks so much, Rachel. We're so happy to be here with you tonight. We are really happy to be here sharing some of our resources that we have at the Smithsonian. I'm Anne, and I work at the National Air and Space Museum, as Rachel mentioned.
Yes, and I'm Julia, and I work at the Smithsonian Early Enrichment Center, which is a full-time school for children birth through kindergarten. So kind of marrying those elements of museum education and that early childhood school setting together. So, go to our next slide. So
Yeah, you may know a little bit. Hopefully, you've heard about our collaboration with Get a Head Start with the Smithsonian. And so far, we've been doing some really, really fun field trip opportunities with the zoo, and then also sharing resources from all around the Smithsonian that relate to different topics and themes that should be very close to your heart in all of Head Start. So if you haven't joined us for one of our field trips yet, we have one tomorrow. So hopefully you can all join. If you haven't signed up yet, you can still do that and join us to learn a little bit more about elephants and think a little bit about some really cool, learn a little bit more and actually see some elephants playing at the zoo. So definitely join us for that. And this project is another project that we're doing along with the same collaboration, where we're developing some professional development resources for you so that you can have access to so many of the great stuff that we have at the Smithsonian to share.
Hey. So here we are again. Can see our lovely faces. And we are joined tonight as well by Beth Evans from the National Portrait Gallery and Maureen Leary from the National Postal Museum. They'll be helping us out, especially in our Spanish interpretation channel. So you can say hi to them as well. So here are a few ways we're hoping to get some interaction from you. We're going to be a slightly smaller group, which is awesome. So we are going to ask you a lot of questions and ask for you to respond in the chat. Our first one will be in just a minute, kind of to introduce yourself. But please feel welcome to raise your virtual hand and talk to us as well if that's how you would prefer to interact. Polls, we actually don't have any polls tonight, I think, because we're a smaller group. We're just going to put our answers in the chat. And then you can also submit, I think we're not doing a Q&A function. If you have questions as they come up, please put them in the chat and we will try to get to them in the moment or at the end. But if you do have questions, please let us know. We'd really love to get to them and really answer the things that you're wondering about. So first thing,
yeah, sorry, you go ahead, Julia.
Oh yeah, so as I said, first things first, introduce yourself. You can put this in the chat. You can let us know where you're joining us from, what age groups that you might work with, if you're affiliated with the Head Start program or not, and maybe something you're excited to learn. We would love to know that. And hopefully it'll help you all kind of see connections with each other as well.
Yeah, it's so great to see people from all the way already letting us know that they're from Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have some folks from Canada here, Ontario, Canada, and then, you know, some folks a little closer to us from Virginia. Love to hear where you're all coming from. I'm in DC, Washington, DC right now, and really happy to be here with you. As you heard, we also work with 0 to, 8 years old is my charge at the Air and Space Museum. So birth to 8 years old.
Yes, and similar here at Seek. Again, we have infants through kindergarten. I'm seeing some folks are working with those infants of 0 to 12 months old, 2 to 3-year-olds. Wonderful. Well, hopefully there's something here for everybody. We will address some of those younger ages, how to look for those signs of curiosity, and even really young children before they're verbal and able to tell you what they're curious about. Excellent. I'm seeing some people who are in museum education too. Love that. Hampshire. Amazing. Seeing people from all over the country and all over the world, and so many different ages too. Folks working with early childhood, K through 12 as well. As we hope you'll see, curiosity and wonder is really a universal feeling and something that really defies age.
Rachel gave you already a little introduction to the objectives of this course today, but really we're looking at exploring why curiosity and wonder are at the core of learning in early childhood. We're going to be learning about ways to make your classroom environment a playground for curious minds. And we're going to discover a world of amazing resources from the Smithsonian Institution to inspire young learners. So we'll be sharing a little bit later with you some of the resources that we have at the Smithsonian.
Right. And so
I was going to say, we're not going to read the ELOS standards, but you can take a look at them. And always really important to us to make sure that we are aligned with standards. It's as important to us as it is to you. So we definitely take a look at the standards and think about ways that we can connect with them.
All right. So we'll go ahead and get started and think about what is curiosity? What is this topic that we're devoting our evening hour to? So curiosity is kind of a tricky thing to define if you think about it. We mean lots of different things when we say it, but ultimately, psychologists and philosophers have lots of different definitions, but its core curiosity is that drive to gain new information. It's something has ignited something in you, you want to learn more. You don't have all the information that you want to have. So you're looking for more information. So you can see why that would be so important to encourage in young children, especially when we're trying to teach them. So what does curiosity look like? Curiosity can look like a lot of different things. It isn't just one thing. The way that we act on our curiosity, even as adults, is all different person to person. And so it can look different with children depending on who they are as individuals and how old they are. So you can see a very curious looking infant over here. But a lot of these things kind of defy age as well. These are things that any learner, any curious person might exhibit. So let's dig into these a little bit deeper. So questions. This one feels really obvious. When someone is asking you questions, it must mean that they're curious about something. So children will often directly show their curiosity by asking a trusted adult their questions. And if you're a teacher, you work with young children, that person might be you. I think it's important to note, though, that educators do not need to know the answer to a child's question to encourage their creativity. I think a lot of the time as adults, we feel like we need to know all the answers for children. And that's really unfair to us as people. We can't know everything in the whole world. And it's really unfair to children because they're going to grow up to be adults and we don't want them to feel like they can't be curious or learn new things if they don't know everything. So you definitely don't need to know everything to encourage questions in children. You can encourage them by listening to their questions, making that time and space to just hear what they're wondering about. You can validate their questions, maybe say something like, oh, that's a really great question, or oh, I was wondering about that too. You can write children's questions down. If you are a teacher, you can provide space for children to maybe write their own questions down if they're able to write, or children, even when they're really young, they know that writing is powerful. So if they don't know how to write yet, you could write down their questions for them. Maybe have a special place in a classroom or a learning space to display those questions. And just kind of like I said, providing space and materials to explore and maybe start to answer their own questions. And maybe encouraging them to think about how they might answer their own question. So sensory exploration, we can see this in children of all ages, whether they are pre-verbal or learning how to talk, or even if they don't speak. But children's curiosity is really activated by their senses. It's really one of the main ways that they learn about their world. We can see this all the time when working with young children. They're always trying to touch things or put them in their mouth or just get them kind of closer, put a closer look at them. So we can encourage this by just giving them objects that they can explore safely and with all of their senses. So things that maybe for really young children are safe to put in their mouth. This child in this picture is at a garden. They can explore that sense of taste. That can be kind of a harder one sometimes when children want to put everything in their mouth. But just giving them those opportunities to use all of their senses the way that they really feel driven to. When children are engaging in some sort of sensory activity, engaging them in some conversation. Again, even if they aren't necessarily verbal enough to respond back, just sort of maybe narrating what you're seeing, asking them a little bit about what they're doing, what they're thinking about, asking them to describe what they're experiencing or describe their observations, just to kind of engage and try to figure out what maybe they're getting from that experience, or prompt them to try something new. And narrating pre-verbal children's experiences. Maybe think about, what are they doing? What are they putting in their mouth? Maybe wondering why they're putting it in their mouth, thinking about what kind of experience they might be having while they do that. And kind of narrate that for children and show them that it's a really valid way to move throughout the world, is to use their senses. Um, Experimentation as well. Children are very natural experimenters. There's actually a lot of research that shows that children often will follow the scientific method relatively accurately in their play. That process of coming up with a hypothesis, doing some maybe background research of what they might already know, conducting an experiment, comparing it against other results, and then trying again with new variables. The children are kind of naturally follow this process when trying to learn something new. So you can encourage this by giving children the space and materials to experiment with. You can also experiment what they're doing, kind of label to them that they're experimenting. Say, oh, you put this truck on this rolly piece of wood. What happens if you push it down here? What happens if you push it down here? Or, narrating some of the different experimental techniques that they're using. And then asking them about maybe what conclusions they've come to and what they can learn from their results. So kind of getting to that piece of, you did this experiment, you can draw conclusions from that. And then you can use that to go into a whole new experiment and think about something new in this different way. And experimentation is really core to how children interact with the world, and adults too in some ways. You might find yourself doing experimentation and not even realize that that's what you were doing. Close looking. This is something we love doing at the Smithsonian, is getting children to look really closely at something, whether it's an object in a collection or a specimen, or even just like an everyday object that we've brought in. We really love to encourage children to look closely at things. And when children are interested or curious about something, they'll look at it for a really long time. In research with infants, this is often how they judge whether a child is interested in something, is how long they look at it for. And for older children, this is true too, is they try to kind of puzzle out what it is, how it works, compare it against maybe other things they've seen before. You'll notice children looking at things for a really long time when they're curious or when they're interested in it. You can encourage this by drawing children's attention to different elements of an object or an image that you're trying to kind of engage them with. All these little things they might not think about, or might kind of need you to help like spark that curiosity. You can look at something from multiple angles and distances. So kind of walk away from something and see how it changes when you get closer, or go around behind it if it's something like a sculpture or something large in 3D like a building, or turn it over in your hands if it's something you can hold. And you can also use looking aids like binoculars or magnifying glasses. These are really fun because they give you that different perspective. You can look more closely at something that might be far away or really big, or look more closely at something that's really small. But they can also act kind of like a focus for children's looking. There's so much going on, but you give a child a magnifying glass to look at something small, it can really focus in their attention on that thing and really help them not be so distracted by all the other things that they're looking at. So this could be a real magnifying glass, or you could even just make one kind of out of cardboard and use that just as a way to really focus their attention for some close looking. Repetition. I feel like especially with really young children, you see this a lot, but even older children, this is often something that you see when a child is interested in something, they'll do it over and over again. If you'll see a child, they want to sing the same song so many times in a row, and you're just so sick of it as an adult. Or an infant will drop their cup off of their high chair, and you'll put it back up, and they'll drop it again. And this can be really annoying for grown-ups, but this can really show an interest in a topic. This is kind of almost an experimentation. They are interested in this cause and effect relationship. They're seeing that they can have an effect on their environment. And that's really exciting and powerful for a child. And they're kind of interested. Does the same thing happen every time I do it? If I adjust how I repeat this thing, will it be a little bit different the next time? And so even if it's a little bit frustrating, you can encourage this by engaging with children when they're repeating something. If it's a pre-verbal child, kind of narrating what they're doing, or wondering about what they might be experimenting with. I wonder why you're dropping this cup. wonder what's different this time when you dropped it. And really kind of try to put yourself in their headspace and maybe think about what they might be thinking. Providing safe opportunities for repetition, you know, maybe you don't want them dropping something over and over again, but they can, or one particular object you want them dropping over and over again, but they can drop the soft ball or the soft toys over and over again. And giving them those opportunities to really engage in that behavior that they want to do. And connecting maybe their repeated behaviors to new choices or topics. If they're repeating one song, you could connect it to a related song, maybe. Give yourself a break, but also maybe explore that thing that they're interested in, maybe in a slightly different way. Let's see. Focus a little bit of what we talked about with that close looking. When children are really interested in something, they can show some really intense focus in it. You know, we think of children as having very short attention spans, which can sometimes be true, but when they're really interested and curious, they can be extremely focused. And so we can encourage this by trying to create times maybe where distractions are limited. If there's really chaotic parts of the day, maybe trying to carve out parts of the day that feel a little bit calmer, where focus can be uninterrupted, providing open-ended opportunities for children to really find something to focus in on, and continue to do that, to just get really focused. And as well, consider observing instead of intervening when a child is playing or engaging in something really focusing. Maybe they've hit a roadblock and your first instinct is to jump in and help. But if they aren't actually in danger or looking for that help, maybe give them a little bit of time to problem solve and be really focused and stuck into that task. And finally, creativity. Creativity really encompasses basically all of the things we kind of just talked about. You know, there's a lot of experimentation with materials and making, lots of sensory feedback and close looking, and all of these things are really all incorporated in creativity. And so we can encourage creativity by providing access to lots of different kinds of materials, being open with how children are using those materials. We might have a vision of how we wanted a creative project to go, but maybe children have other ideas. And if it's not, you know, harmful or dangerous, there's really, you know, nothing wrong with kind of following how they'd like to approach materials. And also, you can surround children with maybe familiar materials, but additional images that might prompt some inspiration of how to use them in different ways. Okay, so I think sometimes as educators, our own anxieties can get in the way of really letting children follow their creativity. And sometimes children's curiosity and creativity can lead to dangerous situations, but that is kind of our role as the adult in the room, is to bring in that gentle guidance while trying to keep things open for children's curiosity. So, what does curiosity look like in your classroom or your teaching space? What are some ways that you have seen children be creative? And place this in the chat. And I'm very curious to see what people may have said. All right, let people do that. I'm going to move right along because we only have an hour together. So, so we talked about curiosity. What is wonder? What is this idea of wonder? So wonder is even harder to describe and can be really philosophical, but basically wonder can be a noun, sort of like a feeling of being that's closely connected to curiosity, this idea of kind of surprise and thought and joy, you know, that feeling of seeing the Grand Canyon or seeing, you know, something really incredible for the first time, something like that. Wonder can be a verb as well, to refer to thinking over a question, thinking about all the different possibilities out there. And our world is so new to young children that they really wonder about everything. And so I have a few quotes to kind of get at this idea of how kind of philosophical wonder is to a certain extent. Philosophy begins in wonder. It's the feeling of the philosopher. And, you know, really young children are philosophers in a lot of ways. They're constructing their entire view of the world. And because of that, wonder is the seed of knowledge. To gain knowledge, you have to wonder about it. And, for us adults, maybe we think of wonder as, again, seeing something like the Grand Canyon. But for a really young child where everything is new, just seeing some Post-it notes drop and fill them with wonder. And I'm going to pass it to Anne.
Yeah, so the next thing we're going to think a little bit about, and please do, as we're talking, feel free to post your ideas and questions and comments in the chat, because that won't interrupt us, and we'll be happy to have you talk over us in the chat. Yeah, really appreciate your interaction here as you kind of think about some ways that you have seen or observed either curiosity or wonder. So, next, we all recognize that children are curious, and they're, they have a lot of awe and amaze and wonderment about different kinds of things. But why does curiosity and wonder matter in young children? And, I think what we think about is that curiosity and wonder is like sort of right, as some of those quotes said, right at the seed of all learning. And this is the emotion that makes learning fun. It makes the kids interested, and adults. So if it really is like that drive for new knowledge and that amazement in the world that helps to make that connection with the emotions, that helps to make those new connections in the brain, and really brings to life the learning. And so this is such an important part of learning, is the curiosity and the wonder that young children really have in such a great abundance. And we just like to try to keep it alive and keep it nourished, and keep cultivating it by introducing new and novel things that can still surprise them, so that they can begin to like broaden their world, expand their world, deepen their knowledge and understanding. So we were thinking about some different ways, and as you're thinking about different ways that that curiosity and wonder matter in young children, you can also post those, as well as your ways that you've noticed it, that that being shown in your classroom. Why do they matter? They support children in gaining new knowledge in the classroom, the things that we are requiring them, all the things that are related to the standards, and then outside of the classroom as well. So all of just your lifelong learning. They make learning fun and possible. We really can't learn. We don't learn unless we are engaged, unless we are interested and curious and wonder. So those things are really at the heart of all learning and all understanding. So that's really how we learn new things. And they encourage all children to become lifelong learners. And so, if you begin to engage your curiosity as a child, you're going to learn more about how you can satisfy and your curiosity as an adult and throughout your whole life, which is such an important skill for everyone. So these are sort of the ways that we really think about this at the Smithsonian. And probably, you have had experience with that in your learning environments as well. So, we're thinking about ways that you can honor curiosity and wonder. We want to make sure that we honor those feelings and those great emotions that support all learning. So, so in thinking about that, we think about some of the things that we mentioned already, but just reviewing, just slowing down at every so often and taking a closer look at things, really examining them using, you can use tools like magnifying lens, or just use your eyes and to focus in. Sometimes I like to use just like a little frame, a picture frame, to frame something, so you can sort of like focus in on that part of it, or a telescope. Just use your hand as a telescope. It's amazing how much that just that action can help you to focus in and see more. So just slowing down sometimes. It's so important for us as adults to listen to children's ideas and honor their ideas, even if they're kind of just developing them, and to model that for them. So if we expect them to listen to us, we listen to them as well, and we model for them to listen to each other. So that listening is such an important part of honoring their curiosity, really being there with them on their journey. And being on there with them on their journey is also, we always oftentimes have our goals, right? We know that we've got to get this thing accomplished today, and we're on our way somewhere. And then all of a sudden we pass by something that is amazing. And it can be sometimes very tempting because we've got our lesson plan, we've got what we're supposed to be accomplishing today ahead of us. So it's very, tempting to just pass it by and be like, we don't have time for that. But, you could be walking by and see this tree knocked over and the amazing root structure, exposed. And just take that moment to be like, wow, that's amazing. Look at that. It's incredible to see. So just having those moments, recognizing those moments, they could be really obvious, or sometimes they're like really small. They're just like a child could be like amazed by, some dust in the light, and stopping to wonder at that. And you think, oh, that's just dust, but it looks beautiful to them. So, it's just, you have to put yourself in that moment and be like, wow, that's a moment where we can really learn about the structure of the tree or the way that light reflects on small objects. It's also really important as our adults and to normalize this idea of I don't know, let's try to figure it out together, and not having all of the answers. So you can go on that journey together. And I think this is one of the things that I really feel so important, that young children feel like, you're the guide, but you're also like the pal that's going along with them for the ride. You're not have to have all of the answers. And in fact, like as Julia said earlier, it's sort of a detriment to both of you to always feel like you have to have all the answers. And certainly don't make them up. If you don't know, we always say that in the museum. I don't know, that's interesting, let's go and try to find out together. And that's what makes it fun for everyone. You're always learning. Another way that you can honor the children's curiosity and wonder is to stop, document what you're noticing they're learning about, what they're interested in at that moment, and reflect together. So that can happen with the youngest children and all the way up through, the oldest children. And these documentations, whether you're just noting down the things that they're saying, or taking photographs, or talking together back and forth about what they're noticing, you can use that documentation to show others what's happening in your classroom, whether that's administrators or other parents or teachers or the kids themselves. Like, remember when we did that? And having that opportunity to reflect on their learning is an important part of their learning. They're learning how they like to learn and reviewing what they know. So this is like a super important part of honoring curiosity and wonder. So our next thing is sort of thinking about, okay, how do we apply some of this to, the things like we talked a lot about all of these ideas, but what are some ways that we can apply this curiosity and inspiring curiosity and wonder? And at the Smithsonian, and we're, museums, and so objects are what is really at the heart of our mission and our understanding of the world and what we really believe in. And so we're going to focus a lot today on objects and how objects can help to inspire curiosity and wonder. And object-based learning is a big part of what we do at SEEK and all around the Smithsonian. And so we're going to kind of give you an opportunity to think a little bit more about that with us. Maybe you already do a lot of work with objects, but hopefully maybe you'll get a few more ideas through this. So here we have a few examples of objects inspiring curiosity and wonder. It could be an art object like these screens in the art museum, or a natural object that like the nest, a bird's nest, or leaves, or different things that you're bringing into the classroom to explore more closely. Or you know, again, like something really amazing like a giant amethyst crystal. So these different things objects can inspire curiosity in so many different ways. Children might be thinking about the theme of the artwork and what it's depicting, or they might be thinking about how it was constructed and what are all the different materials that it's made out of and how it was put together. Or they might be thinking about just like, wow, what a beautiful color and what a beautiful shape, and you know, is that something I can eat? So, you know, it's like there's so many different ways that objects inspire our curiosity. So we're gonna take some practice now and looking closely at an object. And this object that I'm showing here, or that we're showing here, is an object from the Smithsonian. So this is not something that you'd necessarily see in everyday life. So we're gonna take a closer look. And we'll turn to the next slide. This is a little bit literally closer of the same image. So first question I'm going to ask you, and you can put in the chat, what do you see? What do you notice? You can look all around this image. Look at the very top of the image, and then look down at the bottom of the image. And, you know, to the left of the image and to the right of the image. What do you notice about it? And you could please type in the chat if there's anything you noticing right now. You're seeing some shadows, a shadow, so it's somewhere where there's a light shining on it and you see the shadow of it behind it. Looks like maybe it's netting. Have you ever seen anything like this before? Does this remind you of something else that you've ever seen? You see, you notice that it's a water scene in the exhibit, so maybe it has something to do with water. Looks like a trap or a cage. Like maybe something like a fishing trap or a lobster trap, a crab pot. Those of us from this region in Maryland, we know a lot about crab pots. Maybe it looks like it has some kind of a flotation device on it. Let's take a turn to the next slide. This is another view of the same object, but like looking at it from down below, looking up at it. So just so you can take a look at another, maybe it's a tent. Somebody said it looks like you could move things or even people with it. Yeah, it's pretty big. It's big enough to fit somebody inside. Anything else that you're noticing right now as we look at a different view of it? We can turn to the next slide again. Is there anything that you wonder about this? You had a lot of good things that you've noticed. Looks like whatever goes in won't be able to get out again. And that's a good trap, right? Well, there's something that's a trap. Definitely looks like something that would be fun, like for kids to get inside and hang out in. Something you'd like to have in your classroom, maybe, like really great object. Question about how old it is, because we don't have a lot of context about this. So if we know how old it is, it might help us to understand more about when it was used, help us to identify what it is. Yeah, it could be like a swing or a cradle. So these kinds of objects that, you know, we don't really know what they are, and like even for adults, it's kind of fun, right? It's kind of interesting to kind of guess, like, oh, I wonder what this is, and I have some ideas, but I'm not really sure. And Amanda says, was it used to pull people out of the water? So I'm not going to let you hold on too much longer. We'll change it to the next slide. You might be thinking, these are some things that we already said. You said, you know, it looks like a net or a trap used to catch fish. People said maybe it was used to rescue something or someone. You might think maybe, oh, it was something that was used for animals in the water, or, you know, to bring things up out of the water, somebody said. So those are all great ideas about what it was used for. Was it used to pull people out of the water? It was. This net was used to rescue astronauts. Now, I'm from the Air and Space Museum, so I had to use an Air and Space Museum object, an intriguing object. To rescue the astronauts after they returned from the moon. So if you look on that first picture, you can see the capsule, the command module that returned from the moon and came through the atmosphere. So it had these very, very big parachutes that slowed it down, and then it splashed into the water in a splashdown. And then after they splashed down, the astronauts climbed out and climbed onto rafts, and then a helicopter came to rescue them out of the water. So they got into the net to go up into the helicopter, and each astronaut, there were 3 astronauts in each capsule. So they would crawl into the net, go up into a helicopter, then they'd lower it down for the next one. And that's how they got out of the sea, and then took them into their quarantine station where they had to stay in a little I don't know, van for a few days before they were allowed out, because they weren't sure if they'd have some kind of weird moon germs or something like that. So yeah, definitely this kind of like intriguing idea. Of course, this might be something that would be really fun to, you know, to show preschool kids. Of course, maybe infants, but probably not as much. But they might be intrigued by the images, the pictures. A lot of times we like to take laminated pictures and give them to infants, and they explore them and look at them, and they just, you know, it's kind of really fun for them to explore them that way. So we do a lot using images with all of the ages that we work with, and kind of like talk a little bit about it or sing a song. So the question, we have a question about, do the objects have to be really complex, or can the objects be more simple or familiar? And I think that's a really good question. I'm showing you mostly some complex objects and more unusual objects, because of course we have a lot of those at the Smithsonian. So we love to use our really amazing different kinds of things that we have. But more familiar objects are also really great, because again, as we know, young children have not encountered a lot of things in their life. So just looking closely at something that's more, even more familiar to them, and slowing down to take a look at something that's familiar, is a great way to explore it. You know, even like this glass that I have, I might, you know, feel it and say, oh, it's cold to the touch. I notice it's round. It makes a sound when I hit it. So, you know, there's lots of things that you can do with just a common object as well. So that's a great question. Just like quickly looking at another object, you can see here that here's a caregiver holding an infant, exploring this amazing amethyst crystal with their hands. So I'm telling you what it is this time, but as you can see, what do you think that you know, what do you think that the child is thinking as they're touching that object? And like what questions do you think you might ask the child to encourage their curiosity? What kinds of things would you say? Those crystals, we have all this beautiful exhibit of crystals and minerals, rocks and minerals at the Natural History Museum, and they all look delicious. I would love to eat all of them. They all look like candy. But I think it might hurt my teeth. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure my teeth are not very strong. Excellent. So yeah, it's always fun to think about what kinds of objects you could use. And yeah, what does it feel like against your hand is a great question, because you can imagine that might feel different from other objects. Parts of it are very smooth and parts of it are very pointy. So it has a lot of different textures to feel. So thinking about that is a great way to encourage them to explore more and to think about what they're exploring.
In response to Anne, your statement about oh, I'd love to eat them, but I think they'd hurt my teeth, I would say, well, what makes you say that? Encourage them to go a little bit deeper with why they think what they think.
Definitely. You can go to the next slide. So like we said, you can use unfamiliar or unusual objects in your classroom, and these objects might be like even something like an old telephone. So this is like something that might be familiar to some of us. We've used them a million times, but to young children be very unfamiliar. So it's kind of fun to explore something that's like a different version of something that they've usually experienced. And that can be an amazing experience for them. Definitely. And you can think about those different questions to ask. You can create like a little curiosity corner in your classroom and think about like changing out the objects in it so that the kids can explore those objects, and you know, keeping it a little bit novel. So every once in a while you add some different things so they can explore them. So again, here we see, you know, a child exploring pots and pans, and those are really great because they're, you know, they're very new to them. You know, they're amazing. You know, they're big to them. They're a giant thing. It could be a hat. There's all kinds of obviously objects from nature that you can find outside or purchase. Things like rocks that you found. Kids love to pick up rocks, seeds and leaves. And of course, if you bring them into your classroom, you want to sort of make sure that they're clean and not full of any kind of critters that you don't want to bring into your classroom. But those are interesting to take a look at, really, like as well, so you can put them into a container so that if there are any critters that came along with it, you can be very gently look at those for a little while and then reintroduce them back outside again. Handmade objects, as somebody also said, like if you have, you know, some maybe you have some special things from your own cultural background at home, some things that you saved from your family, some old textiles, pottery, baskets, maybe, you know, your metal work. All of those things can be great objects for kids to explore, to think about, again, the materials, how they were made, how they could be used, how they were used, and how they could be used. All of those different things can help to spark imagination and curiosity. All kinds of kitchen tools. You can use tools as well, as long as you make sure that they are, you know, safe and not you know, as long as you make sure that you feel like you're going to be able to use them in a safe way. And then even toys that have like moving parts, or toys that are made from different materials, are great ways to help them to be curious about the world. You could take a look at some real food and pretend food and kind of think about the difference between them, and compare them. So many different ways to encourage curiosity. So we're wondering if you could share, because I know that you probably use lots of things in your classroom. So what are some things that you use to inspire students to be curious? We have a few ideas in the chat already. Leaf collections. You know, we had somebody talk about bringing in some indigenous objects. That's really cool. So we're wondering, what else do you use to inspire students in your classroom? I love this picture of a child looking through these ski goggles, and sort of like they're a different color, so like sort of looking at the world through rosy colored glasses, having a different perspective. Or even just obviously a big cardboard box is one of those typical things that can you think about that, and it just can become anything, and that's a really great way to inspire curiosity as well. Kids love flashlights, that's for sure. And fun toys like a Slinky. I don't know what a wrapper snapper is. You have to tell us. I love to use magnifying lenses, binoculars, different kinds of lenses to give an idea of different things, give it a different perspective. Lots of great ideas in the chat. Thank you so much for sharing them. Using a conductive clay, that's really fun. You can do the Play-Doh, and that has extra salt in it, and those are really cool. Making circuits, squishy circuits, super fun activity to do. So lots of different ways you can use get curious about science, get curious about art, get curious about all the different kinds of things in theater. Really fun to take an object and say, okay, so here I have this, what could it be? It's a microphone, it's a hat, it's a lot of fun thing to do. Whoop, I rang the bell. That was my water glass again. Definitely. Keep we really love to hear more from you, so you can keep posting in the chat. We can turn. Oh yeah.
Yes, I was just gonna say, it looked like SUNY turned on their camera to show us maybe what a wrapper snapper is. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead and show us. Oh yeah. Do you want to like hold it up?
If you're in speaker view, you'll want to go to gallery so you can see what she's showing us. Oh,
Yes, it's like those like plastic tubes that you can kind of like open and stretch out, and they kind of make that like ooh
Hi.
noise.
Yeah,
okay.
that's a very
Oh,
famous
there it
one.
goes.
Oh my gosh, I love those,
Yeah.
even as an adult.
Everybody
This is a-
loves those. Now I know what they're called.
I was gonna say I never knew I'd be like the thing you get your fingers stuck in. That one.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you. All right. So we'll move along. I know we're at, oh my gosh, we don't have a ton of time left, so I'll try to move through this quickly. So another way to inspire children's curiosity is just think about the spaces we're bringing them into. Think about spaces that maybe inspire curiosity or wonder in you, maybe really big ones or small ones. So think about when you're maybe having circle time with children, what's a different place you can try out to have that circle time with them. What different perspectives can you try, like laying on the floor or being upside down? How can you make maybe a different perspective if you're in the same place? And then also really think about those places that are kind of within your reach, maybe like a park or a fountain, or even honestly sometimes just going outside is enough, and being out in nature. Kind of shift things up, inspire some creativity. So the natural world is sort of endlessly changing. It's part of why it's so fascinating to children and us as adults. It's a little bit different every time you go out. That tree has grown a little bit. That patch of grass has died. It's always a little bit different. And there's always something new to wonder about for children, because every time you go outside, it is a little bit different. So even if you go to the same outdoor place every time, there might be something new there. Stories and books can also inspire children's creativity. You can just even reading a book can help inspire their creativity, give them new knowledge to be curious about. You could even, though, if you can't find the right book, you could make up your own stories, either to tell verbally or something we'll do at Seek is just kind of make our own books in like PowerPoint and print them off and laminate them and use that to just make sure that we have the exact book that we wanted that kind of follows the narrative that we think will be the most interesting. You can connect the book to objects and manipulatives, especially with young children. This is a great way to hold their attention. So they're physical, they're physically touching and moving something and they're listening at the same time. And when choosing a book, there's so many things to consider, but thinking about the topic and the storyline, how much text there is, and the quality of the illustrations, because you can really use those as something to stop and look at closely as well. Sometimes you don't even need the words if you have really good quality illustrations that connect to what you're talking about. I'll hand it back to you, Anne, to do play.
Yeah, there's all different kinds of play and that you can, help to create wonder and curiosity. As we said, the real objects and props are a great way to encourage curiosity. And you can use like sort of different kinds of materials and incorporate props and real objects together. So that's kind of a great way to do it. And change to the next slide. So here in this scene, we see, I just made this was one that you showed before, but I love this picture of these kids and they're using a real teapot and a whisk and a bowl, and then their prop, a tea set. So what a great way to encourage them to explore like playing with tea. Here's another one that I love about like showing play, the next one, of this child using tools and fixing the wagon. And so, this like idea of like using a real object but playing with it, a great way to encourage their curiosity. How could I fix this? What are different ways that I might use this? And playing out a whole scene in their head. This is a great way that kids learn. And the next one, again, is that idea that we wanted to think about today together with you. So we got through pretty much everything, is just a reflection. What are some things that you might take away from this today? And we wanted to share with you as well, some, as we said, some resources from the Smithsonian. So, but reflection, of course, is a big part of how we all learn. So just take a moment together to think about that. We're putting in some great resources. We have resources from the Hirshhorn that give you ideas about tinker trays, which is a great way. I think that tinker trays was on the picture that didn't show up for some reason, but one way that you can like pull together a lot of different materials and play around with them. So yeah, definitely put in the chat some ideas that you think you might like to implement in your learning environment. I know I love that picture of the mechanic working on the wagon too. It was so cute. And great, like this idea of like not always using these toys that are made for kids, but like mixing it up and using things that are, real, and then comparing it together. And we wanted to share these resources. And we kind of had to like go quick at the end with the resources. They're all here in the chat. But also, if you go to this same course on the National Head Start Association's Academy, there we have everything there, all of this whole presentation in a virtual form. So you'll be able to find all of those resources there too. And we have at the Smithsonian, we have a thing called the Learning Lab. That's where we share our resources. So we wanted to make sure that we have that you can go to this Learning Lab and find resources from all of the Smithsonian museums, and especially ones that are created specifically for these audiences.
Whew, and we're right at time. We did it. Yay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you all so much for coming and listening to us and everything that you added in the chat. It's been so lovely to look through your comments. And thank you all so much for engaging so much. It's so lovely to hear different ideas that you have and giving each other even ideas in the chat. It's so lovely to see.
So I had a question about sign in for the webinar, and Zoom does track those who attended. So the email that you used to sign in is how we will send you your certificate of completion. This does count as an hour of PD for you, so we'll make sure that you receive those. If you want to share this recording with others, I know that this was so inspiring for me, and sometimes that's all you need to get over the what I like to call curiosity fatigue, right? Where if they slam that cupboard door one more time, you just need some new ideas, some fresh perspective, and this is really helpful for that. So we'll make sure and send you guys the link to this. You can always take the course again. As Anne and Julia said, it is on our learning platform, so we'll make sure you have access to that. And all the additional resources too, so you can just keep the learning fresh for you and for them. Thanks so much for coming out this evening, everybody. Have an amazing day. You're an amazing you. We appreciate you. Thanks, Anne and Julia, so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming out this evening. We really appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.